Today I am going to show you how I go about using concrete bolts. These are a really versatile fixing for going into concrete. Very, very strong fixing you get with these. So I'll show you a few tips for using them, how I go about using them, and hopefully you'll find that helpful. Hiya folks, and a very warm welcome back to the show. I have got loads I want to show you today. This is going to be a very honest video. Obviously I'm going to be showing you all about using concrete screws. There's going to be a little kind of mini review of this drill that I've never been 100% happy with, and an even shorter mini review of this leaf blower. I'm going to show you how not to drill a hole in concrete where I almost break my wrist. Oh Jesus. And in a moment, I'm going to show you a real life scenario of using concrete screws to bolt our decking to the ground. But to start off, to get straight into it, I'm going to show you with some smaller fixings, first of all, how I go about using concrete screws, in this example, just into a concrete block. So the big benefit of concrete screws is that they literally tap their own thread into concrete. You just drill a pilot hole and then you can go straight in. They're nearly always Torx or hex head because they need to withstand a really high torque from whatever implement you're using to attach them in. I like using an impact driver. Some people frown on using an impact driver and say it can damage the thread. I've never ever had that problem, but I would suggest you get used to using them and just work out for yourself the tool of choice that you want to use for driving these actually into the block. So I'm going to start off with some smaller fixings and some common scenarios that you might run into for using these sort of things. These ones I actually bought in error and they're far too short to do anything with really. But we've then got these ones that are a size up. Unfortunately, they don't have the pan head on them. They've got kind of a countersunk head, but they're still fine in loads of different scenarios. The main thing with concrete screws, though, is that you have to be going into a predictable substrate. You can't put these into a mortar line. You can't use them in thermalite blocks or anything like that. You need to be going into a predictable, strong substrate. So as I say, we'll start off with these smaller ones and then we'll progress through the great big bolts that I'm going to be using to bolt the decking down. So these little ones here, these just need a 5mm pilot hole. So I'm using the SDS drill for this. You can use whatever you want. And the first thing I'm going to do is just put a mark on the drill bit so I know what depth I'm going to. I like to go a good bit deeper than the screw itself. Obviously account for the thickness of whatever you're actually attaching on the wall. Let's assume we're attaching something that's very flat on the wall. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper. So I'm going to take the hole probably to around that kind of point there-ish. I'm just going to mark it with tape because it makes it a little bit easier for you to see what's going on. I do sometimes use the depth gauge on the drill, but sometimes they're not overly reliable because they can start moving around while you're using the drill sometimes, and the depth gauge can also mark the wall as well, which isn't always desirable. So drill the hole dead straight forward down to that depth there. As I say, 5mm bit for these ones. And then these ones just use a T25 Torx bit, wang it straight in with the impact driver. Done. Now, I'm just going to try and demonstrate, hopefully without damaging the thread too much, how strong that fixing is. So this is a 7 N concrete block here, weighs about, what, 15 kilograms or thereabouts, pretty heavy. Let's see if I can pick the block up. There you go. So that ain't coming out anytime soon. I wonder if, let's try it this way, see if I can pick the whole block up. No bother. So just be careful because modern impact drivers can potentially strip out the concrete completely. So just be careful as soon as you feel that getting grip, don't keep going because it will just strip out, and once it's stripped out, that is one of the disadvantages of concrete screws. Once the thread's gone, you're either going to have to use a bigger fixing or drill the hole in a different place. But yeah, that is not going anywhere. So let's try another scenario. Slightly bigger fixing. These are 7.5 by 120mm concrete screws. Really commonly used for like fixing windows and doors into blockwork and into doorways and things like that. So imagine we are fixing, imagine this is a door frame. So for these need a 6mm pilot hole, which I'll just swap that out quickly. And again, I'll mark the depth, but we should take into account the thickness of this as well. So if you imagine we're going to be going through like that. So we're not really going to need much past there. We'll go a good inch or so deeper. So we're probably going to go to about there. Oops. Theoretically, that should be more than enough, but my general tip with these is to go deeper than you think you need to go, because it can easily bottom out. So this might be a little bit tricky to do one-handed, but we'll do our best. So imagine this is a door frame. I'm going to drill through. These ones technically need a T30 bit, but I always find the T30s on these are a little bit tight, so I'm using a T27. Right. So we have run into a really common problem that you have with concrete screws, and that is that even though I know my hole is deep enough, it's deeper than I need it to be, that it's bottoming out. So in other words, the end of the screw is hitting an obstruction in the block, and it's probably from all the dust and things, but yeah, we'll come on to that later on. But basically what I'm going to have to do is just clear the hole out a little bit more. It's too small to use like a hole blower, so I'm just going to go a little bit deeper than I thought I needed. Give that a try. Yeah, that's solid. Did I mark this up with the wrong fixing or something? No wonder I bottomed out in that one. I haven't got the tape anywhere near deep enough. On this, I should be going almost to the full depth of the drill. I don't know how I've done that. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Sometimes I press record and my brain just switches off. So yeah, let's go about there. Now this is another important point that you'll learn why later on when I show you me doing things wrongly. As soon as you hear the drill struggling a little bit, just back out and let the dust clear out of the hole. And just do that a couple of times to make sure the hole's as clear as possible, because, as I say, otherwise you can run into that problem with the fixing bottoming out. Let's just try this. Yeah, that's perfect. That is absolutely solid. Nothing in the world is going to pull that out of there. So for door frames, windows and all that sort of thing, those sort of fixings I find are absolutely brilliant. Now let's head over to a more real life scenario where I need to use much bigger bolts to bolt our decking to the ground. We've got nice, predictable, good quality concrete that we're going into, and I know it's good quality because I mixed it myself. And in this instance, a tapcon connector or a concrete screw bolt is perfect for this kind of job. I've got a couple of different types here to show you. This one's made by Rollbolt, 10 by 90 millimeters, needs an 8mm pilot hole. And then I've also got these Fisher red tip ones, which I think are very expensive. I'm not sure. Fisher gave these to us a long time ago. But again, 8mm pilot hole I'm going to be using with these. And as part of all this, I'm going to kill two birds with one stone and explain my perpetual disappointment with this Makita SDS battery operated drill and why I'll probably be reverting to using my ancient 2450 for most of these holes. So if you've watched some of my previous videos, you'll know I'm quite a big fan of wall bolts as a very heavy duty fixing. Wall bolts have one major disadvantage, and that is that you need to take whatever you're fixing onto the wall, off the wall, in order to get this part of the wall bolt into the wall or into the ground or whatever you're using. So in this instance, where I'm using these stainless steel brackets, I would have to remove the bracket, pop this section in the ground, put the bracket back and then pop the bolt through. Whereas with a concrete screw, you can just drill straight through and leave your bracket in place. You literally drill the hole, clear any dust out, wang this in, job's a good one. You can of course use through bolts, but these do come with their own pros and cons. I'll save that for a future video, and I'll put a link in the description to an article where I discuss the pros and cons of different heavy duty fixings in much more detail. Through bolts are an evolution of wall bolts really. They operate in the same kind of way with this conical feature at the end, but obviously the big advantage of a through bolt is that the threaded portion is the same width as the anchor portion at the bottom, and that means you can use them without removing whatever you're going to be attaching first. They're great, but can be prone to spinning in the hole before they start to get a good fixing. Regardless of that, the reason I'm not using fixings such as these in this scenario is since there's potential for the holes that are drilled to fill up with water over time, and that can cause the thread of wall bolts to seize, and it can also potentially cause parts of the fitting to corrode, and that means it's very difficult to remove at a later date. Not that I'm planning on removing these at a later date, and I'm not using resin since it's simply overkill for a job like this. The concrete screw just seems like a much more appropriate fixing to me, but you know, you do you, fill your boots, use whatever you want. And by the way, you can potentially use them in other materials, but I've certainly used these in brick and concrete blocks and cast concrete, and it all works pretty well. As long as it's going into a decently hard material, it will happily tap its own thread into it. Anyway, let's crack on, get one of these in. This bracket is going to be going there like that. I've already kind of marked the hole because I'm going to drill it without the bracket being in place, just because it's a bit easier to clear the dust out the road. And this is where you're going to quickly see the limitations of my Makita SDS drill. I know this is a crazily long drill bit, but what I do like to do is go a good inch or couple of inches deeper than the fixing actually needs. So if you have a look at this, you see how much deeper I'm going? The reason being that no matter what I do, no matter how well I clear out the hole, I always end up bottoming out. So I am going to go a little bit deeper. That's just my personal preference, but obviously you should follow the manufacturer's instructions. So that is a fully charged 4 ampere hour battery, and it's pretty much, you know, ground to a halt there. And that's only an 8mm hole that we're doing. And when you're doing a lot of holes, man, it eats the batteries. And by the way, here's another little tip. Before you take the drill bit out of the hole, blow the dust away, and then it can't go down the hole. I find a leaf blower works really well. But you can use all sorts of things. You can just blow it away yourself, or you can use these sort of things for blowing the dust out of the hole. But as I say, I find the leaf blower approach works pretty well. Whoa there, let's just rewind a bit and show you what actually happened when I filmed that, since it's a great example of what not to do when drilling any hole. I was so preoccupied with trying to prove my point about my concerns with the battery SDS drill that I completely jammed the drill bit in the hole. And that's why I prefer, when I'm doing a job like this, oh man, I'm gonna have to put that in reverse. Oh, don't get jammed. Oh, Jesus. Get the lecky on that. Marvellous. Can make that up. This is a schoolboy error and not something I'm proud of. I didn't film removing the bit, but it involved a pair of water pump pliers and a lot of swearing. It was a close call. Always clear the hole of dust as you go. And just go easy, because you don't want to get the drill bit jammed in the hole, because that would never happen to me. Stainless steel brackets, stainless steel screws. Let's see if we're hit lucky and we'll get this in the first shot. I doubt we will. Oh, we have as well. Look at that. Perfect. So just by way of comparison, for the Fisher one, I'm going to do this with the mains powered electric drill. SDS again, same size hole. And by the way, Husqvarna very kindly gave us this leaf blower to have a look at. Unbelievably powerful. That's it on the high setting. You have to be careful on gravel, that'll literally just blow the gravel around. The only thing about it that I find immensely annoying is the automatic power off thing. So you come to use it and you have to turn it on every time. Apart from that, pretty good. Seems to eat the battery, mind. That's a 4 ampere hour battery on that. Anyway, I digress. Oh man, can't fit in. It's the only trouble with stainless steel fixings, they're not magnetic. Nay bad. Solid, ain't going anywhere, I'll tell you that much. But yeah, the mains drill, for a lot of holes in concrete, it just seems to perform a lot better. Don't know what your experiences are. I just feel like I made a bit of a duff purchase with this. I know there are better Makita battery powered SDS drills. The other thing I don't like is the balance of the tool. It just seems really long and uncomfortable, and that's due to the inline motor. So the motor is sitting at the back here. But let's be honest, once again, you get what you pay for. This DHR 202 cost me £156 bare. And for an extra £34, I could have got the brushless DHR 242 with the better balanced vertical motor design. My bad, let's never talk of this again. A couple of other little tips for you. If you do find that you're bottoming out in the hole, here's an example of that. I mean, that is as tight as it's going to get. Don't persevere, because you're only going to get the bolt jammed with a loose fixing. So as soon as it feels like you've bottomed out, but your fixing might not be properly attached, just take your bolt out and re-drill the hole, and just be really careful to try and get all the dust out the hole. I mean, as I say, this is with it going probably 2 inches past the length of the fixing, but this mainly seems to be an issue when you're drilling into the floor, because obviously when you're drilling the fixing in and it's cutting its own thread, bits of the concrete are falling down to the bottom of the hole, and basically you're just hitting that concrete that's fallen to the bottom. And yeah, sometimes you just have to clear the hole out a couple more times, re-drill it. See, it's turned off again. That is so annoying. It's also really unstable. It's like, I wish it had a bit of a flatter base on it, because it just seems to fall off everything that you put it on. But other than that, it's all right. Anyway, sorry. Give it another try. Yeah, that's tight. Just don't overdo it, especially with an impact driver. You'll probably just end up damaging the driver. Be careful with stainless steel screws. They are much softer than normal carbon steel screws, and once the head goes, that's it, dead. Don't try and use that again. The problem I've got here, because of where the camera is, I can't actually get in at a comfortable angle to fasten this. I would have actually preferred Torx head screws for this particular job, but I just couldn't find anywhere that had pan head stainless steel Torx screws in stock, so we're living with Posies for these. It'll be fine though. So there you go, another option for a very, very strong, versatile fixing for going into concrete and other solid, as I say, more predictable materials. You might run into problems with these in older houses where the bricks are ridiculously hard and it just has problems cutting its own thread into the brick. So in that kind of situation, your wall bolts might be a better option. Also in old brick walls as well, you might hit a mortar line, and again, you can get away with that with wall bolts because they'll just expand inside the mortar gap and it'll still get a fairly decent fixing normally. But if you hit a mortar joint with a tapcon screw, you've had it. You're going to have to find another location to drill into. Obviously, another benefit of the tapcon is that it doesn't put as much sideways pressure on whatever material you're drilling into. So you could probably get away with going a little bit closer to the edge of a block or the edge of a brick without the risk of it actually splitting the brick. Very, very strong fixing you get with both of these. Now, I'm sure a few of you are asking, why are we bothering to bolt the decking to the ground at all? Surely it's heavy enough that it's not going to move around anywhere. Well, do bear in mind that the decking isn't attached to the house in any way. There's a gap all the way around it, for good reason that I've explained on previous videos. So there is a potential for it to slide about, and we definitely don't want that to happen. And also, I'm no structural engineer, but I do think there's a potential for heavy winds to get underneath the decking. Bearing in mind it's about 25 square meters, and I don't want it to act like a giant sail and get blown up into the air from underneath. Any structural engineers out there, let us know in the comments below whether or not that is something to worry about, or am I being overly paranoid? Either way, I do just think it's generally good practice to attach the decking to the ground, but as per usual, you do you, fill your boots, do it whichever way you want. I'm just showing you the way I would generally do it, but there's probably better ways. Anyway, folks, I hope you found that useful. We'll wrap it up there. If you've got any other tips and suggestions, please pop them down in the comments below, because we all learn from each other on this channel. Do remember there's a link to an article in the description as well, where I go into everything in a little bit more detail, and it's just handy as kind of a reference point, so you don't have to remember literally everything I've said today and in previous videos. And that just leaves me with one more thing to say: look after each other, be nice to one another. We shall see you next time. Tatty bye.